What's up? What's up, everybody?
Welcome to the business show.
Oh.
Welcome to the last show of the year. And
Hello, Rose, Moeder.
welcome to the last show. So we're really excited about this. Before we get on, does anyone have anything exciting that they're going to do over December? Any specific exciting breakaway? I think probably one of my most exciting parts is I'm going to Clarence for a strategy session. So I don't know who of you watched that Inside Bill's Brain. It's a show on Netflix. Have you watched it, Willie?
Gilly says, hi, all Mexico. Sharp. Hola.
Yeah, really cool show. And he talks about where Bill Gates gets most of his insights and stuff from is from his stink weeks. So he actually stink weeks where he goes away for a week, no technology, nothing, and he just sits and he thinks about stuff. So this year I decided to implement it myself. So I'm going to Clarence next week and then spend a couple of days there and just think about stuff, I guess.
So my think week is the first week of January. So I've given myself off until the 7th. So
my first week I'm going to Bolito, but that's not a think week.
No, that's definitely not. That's a drink week.
That's a drink week. Just prepare my liver for the year of what's ahead.
Yes, you've got to oil it.
Cool, guys. So I think let's get into the show. Really, just first thanks to the sponsors, and then we can get off with the show. And just going to pop this down a bit and introduce our last guest for the year. So saving the best for last.
So, cool, everyone. So yeah, like you all know, we pay to work here. It's our passion project. We like to take the word out to as many people as possible, and we can't do this alone. So first of all, for the viewers that comes and joins us every week, thanks so much. If there weren't any viewers, this was kind of pointless. And then secondly, for the guys that help us to get the word out there, it costs us a bit of money to do the ad spend and everything. So for the Tribe Up guys, Ton Track, Value Smart, Time IT, thanks so much. Without you, we couldn't do this. And then for everyone that's watching the show, if you want to get involved, just contact myself or Eugene, and let's see if we can spread the word as much as possible. We firmly believe that you can actually fast track your success in terms of business if you just model after other people. So our purpose of this show is to get other guys, or like we call them, giants, on the show, so that you guys can learn from them, from their expertise and their successes. So yes, thanks to the sponsors and for everyone that joins us every week.
Yeah, I think that's the most important. Sponsors and all that sort of things are really important. The most important part's the viewers. So, thanks.
Exactly. So the first step to success is you must pitch up.
Sure. So that's the thing that I told you about Joe Rogan, where he ran his show for 2 years, they had 200 viewers, and in this year he sold to Spotify for $100 million.
Sure.
$1.5 billion rand. To have
for a vlog. What vlog?
And when we wanted to give up, we saw that it's like,
maybe we just carry on a little bit more.
Just that little bit more, yeah.
Just a little bit more.
So cool. Let's get into the show. Sonia, yeah, it's not far from you. Maybe we must go have a coffee when I'm down in Bolito. We can go up and have a coffee because Bolito's around the corner from you guys. And is the Durban group up and running yet, Sonia? So from the Mastermind group, I saw there's a Durban group coming up and running. Maybe we should have, I think I'm going down from the 3rd or the 5th or something like that. I'm going down to Bolito. So then we can maybe arrange a meetup and go have a breakfast or something.
Cool.
So let's get into today's show. So today our giant is Bossy. So Bossy van der Merwe, and no, he's not my dad or related. But the van der Merwe's are all over, so the chances of me meeting a van der Merwe is pretty good. So I met Bossy, it's probably about 8 or 10 years ago when I bought my first house. And I bought houses on auction. So over the time, I bought a couple of houses from Bossy and he sold a few for me as well. He helped me to establish my property investing career that I sometimes take up, and then I get busy, and then I take.
At least you took some action at some point in time.
And then just met Bossy and just realized that he's got so much more information than just the real estate. So he's been kind of my real estate mentor, and if I have any questions, he's the go-to guy that I ask. And it's the same for you guys. Who is the person that you can model after? Who's someone that you can mentor? Who's someone that's gone through it that can save you years and years of troubles by just following in their footsteps or just getting some advice from them, getting their perspective. And that's the point of the show, is getting perspectives from people who's walked the path that you want to walk. And over the time, we became friends and just started realizing that Bossy has massive amounts of information outside of the real estate. And I've been nagging him for quite some time to come onto the show. So eventually we managed to get Bossy. I managed to convince him.
We left the best for last.
And it's an in-person interview. So I'm just going to move this.
Welcome, Bossy. You can be so glad that you're not family of Eugene van der Merwe.
Pop this down a bit. No, this is fine. Cool. Welcome, Bossy. Welcome to the show. So I think
welcome, Bossy.
Just maybe a quick introduction. So I know you quite a bit, but maybe for everyone else.
Well, I'm clearly a reluctant participant. Because, you know, the real estate, it's probably my 33rd year in the industry. I haven't counted exactly, but it's thereabouts. And I knew the good times, you know, and we don't have them now. So, yeah, one doesn't feel like a hallmark of success like one used to. The last year I made serious money was in 2007. That's a long, long time ago. Sure. We have to wait for the tide to rise again before the boats will come up, I suppose. Meanwhile, we earn a good wage. So, yeah, here I am. I don't know what I can say that'll be interesting to your viewers. Let's hear.
Cool. Go for it, please.
Yeah, cool. So, Bossy, let's jump straight into the property stuff. So, you mentioned it's been quite a while since the market was up there, and we obviously experiencing like a bad economy. But I'm curious to know, what's the most expensive house that you've ever sold in your life?
Well, I've never serviced the upper end of the market exactly.
Okay.
So the most expensive dwelling I've sold probably would have been 6.5, 7-ish, thereabouts. But there's very little that I haven't sold. You know, I've sold shopping centers. The little bit of money I made historically was mostly made from development land, and that is one of the reasons why I think I never equaled 2007 again. Because from 2008 till now, till 2010, the market really struggled to recover, and after that, the financiers were scared, you know, so it's only really the big boys that survived. If you look at residential development in Gauteng today, and you look at a giant like Baldwin, who can compete with them? But I don't know if I should say this on air because I don't know this for a fact, but they...
Spell it. We want to know.
They're in the market of selling shares. I mean, they're a company. So they don't really have to make a huge profit on every unit. Whereas you and I, as an individual developer, have to do that. We don't have a share to sell. So the market is very different. And there's been enormous development for the rental market. One doesn't always know who the investors are. So, yeah, the playing field is not even. We're treading water. And, you know, with our wonderful governance poking their hands into provident funds and the like, I think it's not impossible that people may look more positively again at residential property soon as an investment class. Okay. It hasn't been for a long time. And Eugene said he's going to ask me, what is the best way to get into residential property investment? And I can't with good conscience say that you should. All I can say is caveat emptor. It's very hard to realize decent yields from that, especially because if you look at sectional title properties and you look at And what happens to levies, your money does better in a savings account. So,
Really?
yeah, and that has been very bad for the industry. Historically, South Africans wanted to own as much property as they could. And we had lots of financiers out there, but now they don't. They're shooting the stuff. Obviously, some people are still professional or serious property investors. But every dictator owned 3, 5, 6, 8 properties when I started 30 years ago. Now we've lost that market. So if I lie, I'm lying with their teeth. Property 24 said last year, the average estate agent in South Africa now earns the same that they earned 16 years ago.
Yes. Really?
Now, salespeople are liars, you know. I mean, if you ask your friend,
no, I'm not.
If you ask your friend that sells property, how's it going? They always say it's wonderful, you know. But we are busy. Yes, we're very busy, but we don't earn well.
And tell me, sorry, Eugene, just completely off topic. So one of the things that the reserve bank's now done, and it's the first time in like a whole lot of years that they've dropped the prime interest rate to quite a low level. Do you think that we're going to see an upturn in the property sales? Or
we did, and it's over. I mean, when we came back from lockdown, when we could work again, especially, well, I can only speak for the Gauteng market, but we saw alarming levels of interest for entry-level family homes, for instance.
Okay.
Now, in Gauteng, where we're sitting and having this chat, that would mean a house price between 1.3 and 1.75. We just couldn't find those anymore. They flew off the shelf in a matter of weeks. But you can ask any agent that worked that market. We were inundated with inquiries, and it's already died down. So it would seem, you must remember, there is no science to the property industry. And when you think you've recognized a trend, it's probably just passed. You know, you just missed it. It really just and that's why it's a very hard trade to market. I don't know a great many people in this country that have become seriously wealthy from property sales, because it's a simple concept, but a very hard thing to master.
So that's not a residential side from a property investment side. What about small flats, like these 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 rand flats?
They're a disaster, Eugene, because I mean, if you buy them from the developer and with an artificially low levy, they can't run that place on that levy. So it's going to quadruple within the first couple of years, and then you're stuck with it. And when the levies really get out of hand, you have to subsidize them when you sell from your capital sum. So, one can have, many people have sectional title units that they're happy with as investments because they're so old, they paid so little for them.
Yes.
If you acquire them now, it'll be a long, long time before you smile.
We actually made the sum, Willie, the other day, that your break-even point, if you buy property at normal retail value and you let it out, so if you invest, for example, in a normal bond that gives you 12%, for example, your money doubles in 5, 6, 7 years terms. Your break-even point, where you get your money back for what you've paid into it, if you calculate your levies and your rates and taxes and all that sort of stuff, on a normal property, on the market price, is 12 years.
Yeah, well, I've just sold a property that is the sort of thing I would advise people to buy if you can find them, but they're so rare. And this is a very ordinary, fairly unattractive house with guest house rights, and they turned it into 5 permanently let units, and there's space to add 2 more. We sold it for 2.4, and the potential rental yield when you have the other 2 units as well is about 45,000 a month. Now that looks completely different. You don't have a levy. But those are not generally available on the market. I mean, I can sell them over the phone if I can find them. Why don't you guys manufacture them for me? I'll sell them for you.
And the way that I've noticed as well, and correct me, is if you really want to make money out of property, you have to be creative. You can't just buy a normal flat of property 24 and rent it out. You buy a 2-bedroom flat for 800,000. Your rental on that is 6,000 or 7,000 rand a month. That's excluding your levy. So you end up paying in 5 grand. And the way to really make money is you need to be cash flow positive from the get-go. So income or your yield that you get from the property needs to be more than what you pay for the property.
Yeah.
And that's seemingly more difficult and difficult to find.
It's very hard to find. And even if you go to execution sales, I mean, you sit there and there's a couple of 100 million on that floor looking for investment opportunities. And guys said to me afterwards, I would like your card, please, because I just bought this. And I say, you're welcome to have my card, but I can't sell that for you. You paid way too much for it, you know. So, it's not easy to make money in the South African property market at the moment. Hasn't been for a few years and will probably not be for another few years. Having said that, you must always distinguish between something that will give you capital growth and something that will give you good yield on investment.
Okay.
And the worse your area is, the cheapest areas, the most trashy areas, or the little suburban shopping center in the worst area will always give you the best yield. That is why my Muslim clients that is not scared of that sort of scenario very frequently have astronomical yields. I know somebody whose name I would mention to you if I had his permission, but the family has been in this line of business. Well, he's an old guy, same as I, but his parents were in that, and they just buy rubbish, but they get very high rental yields. But there's any appreciation in the capital value.
So one of my friends that was in the UK with me, Marco, that you've met, he bought his flat from the developers for like 480,000, and after like 8 years of owning the flat, he sold it for 520. Like, yeah.
One of my two of my the partners for the firm that I worked for, when they studied at Wits, and they purchased them for themselves each a flat in Hillbrow, and they purchased those flats for like $20,000, and then when they sold it, like 15 years later, they sold it for exactly the same amount that they purchased it for. So yeah, that was definitely not a great investment.
But just an aside there, I mean, there was a craze for people to buy in Hatfield, for instance. We saw the same thing happening anecdotally. I don't work there in Potch, because people believe that these student flats will give you excellent yields. Now those parents pull their hair out. I mean, just to let thing go today, you have to take a knock off 5,000 rand if you're lucky.
Yes. And that's a big thing that we see now recently as well, and especially from the coaching, the guys coming in and they're asking me what's my opinion on property. I don't really give my opinion, but it almost seems like there's this idea that if you want to make money, buy a flat and rent it out. It's almost like the entry level to investing. Everyone thinks to just buy a flat and rent it out. But that isn't really the case. It's difficult to make proper yields in property.
But the reason why we feel that way is it used to be that way. I mean, in South Africa, historically, property just went up. There were short little periods when it slumped, but it always recovered. And that was our wisdom in the volksmond, you know. Everybody believed that's a sound thing to do. It ought to be. It is because of lack of confidence and we don't want to talk politics at all, but we know what our situation is. I mean, if you want to hear horror stories, then talk to your friends that are divorce lawyers. They will say every time we have to sell an upmarket house, people have owned it for 6, 7, 8 years, we have to knock $1 million off the price to get rid of it.
Just to get it sold.
Yeah, so, you know, if people say to me, what do you have for me that's an investment? I say, how much money do you have? You know, because at the entry level, there's really no money to be made. A couple of people have to club together. And remember now, your yields are better, but the day when you shed it, you must cut that in 3 or 4 again, and then it's not so satisfying. So just beware.
Yeah. So, boss, Eugene.
Make enough money so you can invest in the high-end properties, basically.
Yes. Buy the Clifton stuff.
No, but high-end properties don't do any better, they do worse. But you see, that makes accessible to you, for instance, a little suburban shopping center. Let's say you've got access to, you can spend 15 million. And you know how easy it is to finance a suburban shopping center. There's only one anchor tenant in there.
Yes.
Very easy to finance. You'll be amazed. And that would be a yield of 12, 15, 16, 17%.
Okay.
Coming up now with people salivating and licking their lips for it. We don't know if the seller will be sensible. That remains a good thing to do. Not an easy thing to manage, however.
Basi, we've got Sonia. Sonia asked a question, say, what about investing in property shares? I guess what she means is investing in a company where you can buy shares for properties.
But you see, Sonia, I don't know anything about that. I'm just a property smos. You're now asking investment advice from somebody that sells shares in these companies. All I can say is be careful. I mean, what happened to ShareMax? Those people are still crying on their hands. So it has to be done in a very responsible way. Surely, if you invest in Growth Point, and I didn't say anything about that because I know nothing. But that could be a very safe thing. How well it does, I can't tell you. That you should ask a broker.
But you're still looking at 8-12%, so I invest in some of that stuff. One thing you can also check out is Wealth Migrate. You can now buy property shares with crypto. So they're part of the Roger Hamilton Crystal Circle. Scott Pickens, the owner, so I know Scott. We must maybe get Scott on the business show as well, Willie, for next year.
Yeah, cool.
But they've really revolutionized how you buy properties. So they basically went overseas. They buy medical buildings in the US, but they've got South African backers. And they couldn't get the funds across quick enough for them to pay the deposits. And then they lose out on some of the property deals. So they then adopted cryptocurrency and transfer. So they use someone else's blockchain, created their own crypto, and now the money is instant. And now you can invest from as little as $1,000, and that you buy shares in the property. So they tell you what it is. They tell you what
property.
You don't have any say in that. So if you want to sell out your shares, you have to find someone willing to buy your shares out. But you can't say when they have to sell the property or anything like that. So you do lose a bit of control. But I think property is a really difficult thing to manage. And we've got this perception that it's easy.
So I think, Eugene, the thing about that is if you don't know how the game works, then don't play it. Yeah. And I mean, it comes back to anything else. I mean, if you're running a business, if you're a lawyer, don't go and try and start an accounting business because it's just
a circle of competence.
Exactly. So,
yeah, but there's something more to it in South Africa. Our industry is just so ill. You know, it's not a matter of skill. It's not really that. The whole setup is just extremely ill. I mean, if you look at what happened to the Cape Town market, for instance, we thought that was the opposite thing. And now it does worse than just about anywhere else because people have lost confidence in South Africa. We don't get able to buy it anymore. We hear the story all the time of 12 million rand homes selling for 8 million. We don't have that in Gauteng quite, you know. So the problem here is a political and macroeconomic one. It's not a property problem.
Yes. Okay. And have you ever tried to invest overseas? Is there vehicles that you can do that? Eugene mentioned the one, but I mean, is there other vehicles to do this?
I really don't know. You know, I scrutinize my opponent's published records. I'm referring to Pan Golding. They've got really impressive things. When I start to investigate them, I realize that a lot of that is probably fabrication. You know, but I don't.
Well, they have shareholders to keep happy, right?
You know, lots of people believe you have to fake it before you make it, but I'm not an expert on that.
I'm going to buy out in US next year is one of my goals that everyone can keep me accountable for. I'm going to try and flip a property in the US, so I'll come back to you on that one. Yes, Bossy. So we go for beers every now and then, and one of the things we end up talking about quite a lot is
should I go to America?
America is probably one of the only places I found that I would actually go and stay. And I know you have a similar interest as well.
My interest is quite different. You see, I dislike most things about America. I only like the economy.
Yeah.
And the economy is very favorable for property. I had a sales associate here that became one of my best friends. She's a Russian girl that's now a citizen in Sarasota. And I get so jealous when I see how well she does, you know, because I know her skills. I know how relatively ineffective she was here. And it's just a matter of the economic environment. Of course, they have different challenges there. I mean, I come from the Remax stable. Whenever I was in America, which was, I don't want to say frequently, but I've been there on numerous occasions. I always used to visit brokerages. Some areas, because of their bad weather, there are months in the year where people don't view property. There's too much snow, or it's too hot, and the wealthy people go to cooler climates. I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
But now in Florida at the moment, for instance, they have a problem where they have no inventory, as they call it. There's just nothing to sell. So they just sell for developers off plan. But that also works, you see, because the escrow system closes so fast. The development system works exactly like ours worked when I started 30-odd years ago. Local government still contributed towards it. Yeah, everything's for the developers bill, which makes it really bad.
So when are we going?
That was my next question.
I'm a really old guy now, so I don't want to be desperately unhappy in my dotage. I'm just not sure yet that I'll be happy there. You know, the way I come across now is not the way I really am. I'm very outspoken, and the Americans don't like that. So I don't know how well I'll adapt, but I do like the economy.
So besides for America, what is one of the other really interesting places you've visited?
If it wasn't about making a living, I would live in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. It's just the most fantastic place for me.
Really? Argentina?
The people are wonderful. Okay, now you may say, oh, I'm crazy to exchange one dodgy economy for another. But that economy is definitely on the up. They have the highest level of education in Southern America. So they've got enormous political stability now, which they never used to have. If you're in Buenos Aires, it's like a European city. It's beautiful, it's clean.
Sure.
The old people go to the coffee shop wearing a tie and a suit. You feel like shedding a tear for it because it's a cheap suit. But no, it's a lovely place, lovely spirit. It's a clean country. The only thing I have against it, it's flat. I don't like the flatness in America. There's got mountains on the edges. If you travel,
that's so interesting.
You can't have your bread buttered on both sides, right?
No, really, it's a fantastic place. I don't know anybody that's been to it. Anybody that likes soul in a place that didn't like it.
Yes.
Oh. Cool.
Really.
Go for it, Eugene.
Cool. So another question that I have is probably one of my favorite topics is human behavior, just how we think, how we act, why we do some of the stupid stuff that we do. And I'm probably a prime example of that.
No, we wouldn't say that, right?
So before I get on to the question that I want to ask about that, I've got another question. Every time we talk, there's almost no topic that I can bring up that you don't have not an answer for, but where you can say, well, I've read this book, and I found it, and in 1972 this happened. And how did you obtain all this information?
I read a lot. My mother was a librarian, you see.
Really?
So we just grew up with reading, with books. I never took to television. So I've always been a reader. And you know, I said to Eugene at the start, when I talk about property, I don't particularly want to bring up my sordid past because I'm I'm vocationally disturbed. I come from, I hope to be a classical musician, trained to be a classical musician in my youth. And then when that didn't work out and I was running out of money, I opted for the behavioral sciences. And what was probably wrong with me as an estate agent is the fact that I never became an all-out estate agent. I was a human being developing on the side, and that was what I did for money. It was easy money. I made great money. I like money. Who doesn't like money? Yeah. But money, money is not really important enough to me. I don't know who you ever read now the outgoing president of America's first book, but he actually was very sensible and said very nice things. Which book is that? I forget what it was called. It's on my shelf. It's not a remarkable title.
Is that his first book?
Sorry?
Is it his first book?
First book.
Just Google it while we talk.
But the point he makes in it is that you're unlikely to keep a budgerigar. He actually didn't say budgie, he said budgerigar. If you don't care for caged birds, and if you don't love money, you will not hang on to money. And I thought that was a clever thing to say, and it's perfectly true. Something else he said, actually, because he had just acquired, I think, the Miss World pageant then, is he says, people talk to me about women and money, women and love all the time. He says, and they say, so what is more important, love or money? And I say, love works where love works and money works where money works. Yeah. So he wasn't always a fool, actually, you know.
Is it the art of the deal?
No.
I'll find out.
If that was the first book, I wouldn't have read that one. That wouldn't have appealed to me. Because agents don't need that, you see. Yeah. People think we have to be wonderful negotiators. You don't have to be. It's whether you have a really good deal for someone and whether everybody in the equation is right to do the deal. Whether you will put the low offer I present is whether your wife that you're divorcing is squeezing you for cash now. Not what I say. You're not going to listen to what I say. So, yeah, it's closing the deal wouldn't have interested me. I wouldn't have read that.
So we talk about that, and the question that I wanted to ask, I first wanted to find out, where did you find out about all this information? The actual question I want to ask is, out of human behavior, what's one of the most interesting things that you've noticed?
Humans are interesting.
True.
Well, some a bit more than others.
Yeah. What's Eugene?
You know, and I think something that's very interesting to me about humans is how we overrate ourselves. We think we're so unique, we're so hard to understand, but we're not really. It's we're all very much the same, and pretty transparent, really. If you just sit down and observe someone, you'll come to know them pretty soon. So it's, but you know, I don't have the mindset, and I've never had the mindset of analyzing people. What a futile thing to do. It takes the joy out of people. One experiences people and one appreciates them for what they are, what they offer. And one identifies with their weaknesses, I think. And yeah, but if you ask me about the reading, to me, a new insight is just the most joyous thing in the world. Whereas to a business people, a big deal is the most joyous thing. You see, I don't have the right mindset to be a top business person. I really don't. I remember being at a party talking to a really wealthy friend, and he said to me, "But you know, nothing is as nice as business." I thought, God, I wish I felt that way. I don't feel that way. I'm not saying I would exchange a huge amount of money for a wonderful insight. You can have the insight for free. Just open the book, just read. And don't be lazy. So I don't know how to answer your question. Just read it's not my knowledge, it's the world's knowledge, but one does collect some of it if you expose yourself, if you immerse yourself in it.
So it seems like you consume quite a lot of information. How important would you say to everyone on the show, it is to actually continuously develop yourself?
It's very important. 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 It's very important Well, you see, everyone on the show is probably not as old as I am. For me, I'm already aware of what I have to do not to get dementia. It's important because your brain needs to be exercised. If you exercise it, you won't get dementia. You know what is the thought is a impulse. And those little rivulets don't form as easily when you're older. And the ones you have to protect. And the reminiscing does not make a synapse fire. So learn. It should be compulsory to learn things over the age of 60. If you don't, it's at your peril.
Wow. Yeah.
So something that you mentioned now as well, and this is something that I struggle with myself, is you mentioned just observe someone and you'll find the joy in their ups and their downs, or their flaws and their, what's the opposite of flaws, their good side, I guess, or their good habits. But we end up having this picture of how someone's supposed to be, and then they have all these flaws, and we try and change the flaws. Why is it so difficult for us to accept the person for who they are? Just appreciate them for who they are. Why do we keep wanting to change people?
It's because you're Western. We're Western. We grow up with dualism, good and bad. And it's getting worse all the time. I mean, the younger a person is, it seems to me that people are losing the art of nuance completely. The baddies are so bad and the goodies are so good, and everything is now awesome. And I always wonder with the youngsters, my kids are adults already, but I always wonder with the youngsters, when the vocabulary shrinks like that, if they actually recognize the feelings when they come across them. But coming back to dualism, Eastern wisdom does not condone dualism. They don't have the right and wrong to the extent that we have. Right and wrong leads you to have expectations, you see. And it's when your expectations are not met, which is why there's the Eastern saying that nothing hurts as much. No, let me rephrase that. If you don't want to hurt regularly, let go of your expectations and you're attached to the outcome, because you control nothing.
You have got no control over that.
You control nothing. You can influence things by being effective. You can influence them, but you can never control them. And then you have to leave it in the hands of the universe. You know, it'll work or it won't.
Yes, and I've heard that so many times. So we talk about it. There's a difference between knowing and believing. So knowing is the conceptual understanding of the facts, and believing is actually implementing it in your own life. And I've heard this so many times about the fallacy of control, where we don't have control over the future. We don't have control over our own actions. We have the action, but not the outcome from our action. So
you can certainly control your behavior to an extent. Whether that is even desirable, I don't want to comment upon, because you guys are too young to even know what that would like. But I grew up with generations that were very self-controlled, at least where you could see them. But they lost the humanity. No, but they lost it completely, and I view them as a lost generation. They didn't live, they didn't have joy, they had no appreciation. I don't see the point. Now, I wanted to say something, but I'm off the German thing. I don't know where I was going with that. But expectation is certainly what fuels relationships. On the other hand, you cannot immerse yourself in every relationship hoping for the best. And I don't mean a very personal one. It could be a business one. It could be a casual one. You need to observe people at least to a point where you roughly know what to expect in this little parcel before you know if you're willing to invest your energy on it. But once you do, you have to take the good with the bad.
Sure.
There's something I really struggle with. Really, I've got like 10 or 20 questions that I still want to ask. So just jump in when you have a question.
No, you go for it.
So part of that is we have this expectation, and then when our expectation's not met, we almost want to turn everything on ourselves. So, for example, I like to exercise regularly. Now, I've date someone in the beginning, they start exercising with me, and then as time goes on, they don't. And then I get into a bad mood when they don't want to exercise. Why do we allow other people's actions like that, for example, to influence our emotional state? If they weren't there, what would I have done? I would have gone for a jog or go to the gym or whatever. Why now that someone's in the picture or that you're dating someone and they don't want to exercise with you, does it influence your emotional state like that?
I don't know, because I don't do that. I anticipate it would be because one has a preconceived idea that this person and I should do everything together. Why on earth? I see no earthly reason why one should do everything together. What news will be shared with you tonight that we've done everything together? It may be so that it works very well in the mom and pop shop in Greece.
Well, there's some things you want to do together. Just something together.
Maybe.
Yeah, but you see, we come from preconceived ideas about how things should be.
Yeah.
And there's a lovely old guru in India called Jaggi Vasudev that says, where did Western people get this idea of a soulmate? The soul doesn't need a mate. He says, just meditate a bit, just work on yourself and you'll be quite self-sufficient. He says if you want to procreate, you need a mate. If you can't afford the roof over your head, then you need a mate, but your soul doesn't need a mate. So it's just these preconceived ideas that we have and that we superimpose actually on the way we live.
Yep.
It becomes such a lot of baggage. I'm a huge fan of a woman called Christina Landman. She was a professor at UNISA in the theology department. Now, I do not have a background in theology.
Yeah.
And my interest in it actually passed in my late 20s even. But she says a profound thing. She says, remember that the truth will never be available to human beings. Only truths.
Sure.
What does that mean?
It means that you can learn something with so much value, but it's not the entire picture. It's not the truth. What I was going to say about Jaggi Vasudev, he says, the less rigid your personality, the more powerful your presence. You cannot liberate yourself. You cannot be a complete human being while you have all these do's and don'ts. Life is not supposed to be that way, I don't think. It's something that we've adopted in the West, and we don't trust ourselves, and we don't trust society, and we want to regiment things so terribly. We're human beings. We have to let them be.
Sure.
Questions I still want to ask, Willie. Can I just ask like one or two more?
Go for it.
On the screen. So if there's any comments, will you just read it out? I'm also moving towards the second part of my life, so the eyesight isn't what it used to be.
The arms has become too short.
One thing that you mentioned to me once that kind of stuck with me is that this metaphor that you used for love and relationships of a real flower and a plastic flower. And that plastic flowers, well, you explain it.
That's not my idea at all. It's a Buddhist idea, but they say love and attachment are sort of opposed, not the same thing at all. If I can just take it a little step back, but this is such a loaded. So I'm editing myself a little bit, which is unlike me. I just spew things forth and people get highly upset. But you know, people sally forth into the world with the idea that I'm out there to find love. Firstly, I don't think it's a worthy cause. I'll try to justify that. And I think we ought to ask ourselves whether love now, if we go back to theology, which is really a philosophy. I mean, there are so many kinds of love. After Germany, they will explain to you, and they have Greek and Hebrew words for it. But most people think I love when I'm merely attached. When my needs are being satisfied, and the more urgent the need is, the stronger the attachment. Now, that attachment, the Buddhists equate with the plastic flower. They say it serves you very well. It's a sturdy thing. You can leave it in the sun. It gets dirty. You can scrub it. You can take it out of the vase and whack the kids with it. But real love is a real flower, and it's a nuisance, and it's a very fragile thing. If you wave it around, you lose petals. But I think one should ask oneself, how important is this thing? Firstly, we must just say that love is not a real thing, guys. It's what we call in psychology a reification. It's a word that we treat as if it really exists. We find the same thing with subconscious. People say, my subconscious mind, and I want to say, where exactly in your brain is your subconscious mind located? It's a hypothetical construct. It's something, it's a word, a description that was dreamed up, which is very useful to describe something, but it's not a real thing, you see. So now we chase through life after a hypothetical construct, not sure if we want it. Remember that marriage, as we know it today, is a very novel thing. Romantic love did not exist until the half of the 18th century, 19th century, the 1800s, 19th century. Didn't exist. Your parents decided who you would marry if you were from a good family. Would have been somebody who had a piece of land you could add to yours, easier to feed the family, very practical. And because you come from similar backgrounds, hopefully you would grow to like one another and be sort of congenial, and everybody had other interests, and you didn't expect to be loved. I don't know, you guys are too young to have seen a film called Fiddler on the Roof, perhaps. But it's about this Yiddish family, and they're very devout. It doesn't say where it is, but somewhere in the old Russia, can't tell you where it's set, turn of the previous century perhaps. But now this daughter wants to marry a Christian. Sorry. And it's a terrible thing for the family because now they have to excommunicate her, etc. And for the first time in his life, this husband wonders whether his wife loves him. It's not something that ever occurred to them. And he says to her, Helga, do you love me? She says, I've never thought about it. I bore your children, I cook your food, I wash your clothes, I milk your cow. Does that mean I love you? So people got married for very practical considerations. And then 2 books changed the entire world. 2 novels. Madame Bovary, Gustave Flaubert in France, and roughly the same time, Anna Karenina, Tolstoy. For the first time in human history, marital infidelity became a reason to kill yourself. It had never been dreamt of before. It was not available even in fiction. Here it emerges. And it took off like wildfire. And today everybody loves romantically. Such a new thing, really. And are we amazed then that it has teething problems? It's only 150.
Sure. How true is that?
It's ideologically pushed by Hollywood. Not because they had an agenda, but because it sold. Sold beautifully. And now everybody loves romantically. And if you love romantically, you expect to find a soulmate that will understand every part of you and satisfy every need. And now a few months into the relationship, you find that is not the case, you see. And that is why the young married lady locks herself in the bathroom. She's not only angry.
And Oscar shoots her.
But she's not angry with you. Remember that she's now probably made the wrong choice. This can't be the right guy. He doesn't understand me. I made a mistake. My life is at an end, you see. All because we subscribe to that kind of ideology. So it's very...
No, Bossy, there's something... You probably haven't watched Notebook. That's it. He hasn't watched it. Why he doesn't understand this?
I did actually. I did. I'm not
just joking.
I did. Good story.
Good story, sure. No, it's wealth of knowledge, Bossy. I hope you've got plans to pass on all of this knowledge. Just one last question.
I just flap my lips in the breeze. It's just observations. My tone that I'm not that enthusiastic about romanticism. I'm not saying that good relationships are not possible or desirable. It's just a good idea to ask yourself whether this really should be at the core of my life. It's just an idea that got born, very much like being born into the Ingekerk, you know. I mean, you happen to be born there. Are you going to stay there? It's something you must explore.
Exactly. Cool. Yeah, thanks. I see we're running out of time. I've just got one last question. 3 pieces of advice for the viewers that you could give them.
I'm going to borrow that, as I do most things, really. Learn to think, learn to read, learn to see. And to see is very, very hard because one looks through these filters of what you believe and the expectations you have. But you know, if one just sits quietly and you let things sniff around your feet, you often discover that things are not what you thought they would be. Brene Brown always says people are hard to hate up close. So just get into contact with things and they may not be what you expected them to be. It can be life-changing.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Bossy.
We definitely have to get you back on so we can explore a bit more. Guys, I've sat with Bossy for 5-6 hours, and I mentioned to him the other day that every occasion is a revelation. Every time I'm with Bossy, I learn something new. I have a new way of perceiving information, and this information that I have a different perspective. So it's just really cool to have people like this in your life that ask the right questions, so that comes with a different perspective. It makes you reflect back in your life. So the advice from my side for you guys is find someone like that. If you're part of our mastermind, you probably find that in our mastermind. If you're not, subscribe to it. I don't know why you haven't yet. But just surround yourself with different people with different perspectives and be open to a different perspective. We so often say, yeah, I know that, and then our brain shuts down and doesn't take on any other information. Or we don't want to listen because it's different to what our beliefs are or what our history has taught us or how we've been conditioned. So just be open to someone else's perspective and you'll be amazed at what you can do. Otherwise than that, guys, have an awesome Christmas. Have an awesome festival.
Merry Christmas.
We'll post up on our WhatsApp group. Bossy, is it okay if anyone wants to get into the property side and they're in Centurion area that we can pass information on to them?
Certainly welcome, obviously.
Most estate agents don't last more than 2 years. Bossy's been in the game for 33 years, so he's doing something right.
You know something right.
If you want to get into property or you want to buy property or sell a property, Bossy should go to guy. I've used him on numerous occasions, so I won't refer people that I haven't used myself. Otherwise than that, guys, just have an awesome December. Go and relax, but remember, we're business owners. We don't do it the same as everyone else. Go think. Take some time to go sit quietly and think about
very important.
2021. How are you going to differentiate yourself? How is, because COVID's not over and the impact of it's still not over. So how are you going to use that, and how is that going to affect your strategy for 2021? And how can you adopt that market conditions to work in your favor, to create a competitive advantage that someone else isn't going to have? So otherwise than that, that's all from our side, Willie.
Last thing from my side, everyone, Merry Christmas. Enjoy the time off. Get well rested. Next year's gonna start with a big bang. Cheers, everyone.
The show, pop some messages on our WhatsApp group. I want to see what your guys' perspective was on today's show. This was probably one of the best shows from my perspective. It's because I love learning and I love the different perspectives. Just an awesome show, Bossy. Thanks for joining our show and sharing your wisdom with us.
Awesome, Bossy. Thanks so much for your time.
Guys, welcome.
Cheers, everybody.
Here's another one, just because it's December.
For Christmas.
For Christmas. It's your Christmas present.